Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.
All righty. Welcome back to another episode of the Business After Hours podcast here with myself and my co-host Jared is not with us today. So we have John. John, how you doing today?
Great, Jeff. Thanks.
Doing good. Give us a little bit of background on yourself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I live in Omaha, Nebraska. We're in Great Northwest or the Midwest here. 3 kids, all of them out of the house now. So we're finally empty nesters at that point in life. But no, I was a career military officer for 21 years in the Navy.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you very much. And it was a very proud thing. I'm very proud of it.
Absolutely.
And had some great people and great teams around me. But took advantage of that leadership and that leadership training and went into what I call the real world of civilian employment. Started out in manufacturing with Ford Motor Company, then with some other companies that are in the auto industry, suppliers. And then about 20 years ago, transitioned over into energy and became an executive, eventually CEO and board member of some services companies in the energy industry, serving both wellheads as well as downstream into utilities, municipalities, everything from gas to water to wastewater infrastructure. And now I basically advise in that space. So I advise investors, private equity, venture capital, as well as companies that are looking for investment, how to get the right marriage of culture there and meet the needs of both. And then I stay on usually to provide some leadership and advice and help the leadership team of that company accelerate their growth.
All right. What is some misconceptions about the energy field?
Oh, I think one of the big misconceptions we run into, and the energy field it can be very counterintuitive to most people who are used to other types of businesses. But I think one of the things is that it's standard, that there are standard ways of doing things, standard contracts, standard negotiate. They're not. Everybody likes to do their own thing. They like to do their own, they have their own nuances that have been brought up through the years. And understanding that is a big challenge in the industry sometimes.
Absolutely.
A California-based, let's say like a SoCal or PG&E, is going to do things very differently than a Con Ed on the East Coast. And I think that is a big misconception that people get into, that it's like every other type of industry. And I say, no, it's very unique, actually. Probably just about the only other industry I would say is infrastructure itself and construction that has that kind of nuance to it.
Now, do you deal with clean energy or coal energy or all and above?
Deal with all of it, really. I deal with everything from oil, natural gas. I've dealt very heavily in RNG before, so dealt with renewable natural gas, especially as it was getting started. And really, the part that I've dealt with there is the lack of infrastructure around that. So how do you get these renewables to the grid or to the insertion point in the fuel lines, and what quality does it have to be? That's a lot of what I've worked on in the past and helped companies with.
Okay. So, I guess for me, when it comes to energy, we see obviously our utility bills here at the house. We see, gas at the gas pump and whatnot. Then when you see failures around the states of the energy grids or whatnot, obviously we know the big one in Texas in 2021 that happened. What impact does that have on those businesses when that stuff fails? Because it doesn't seem like there's much recourse as there would be like for cars. When something happens, they do recalls.
Yeah.
But with energy, it just seems kind of like, you guys are kind of left on your own, it almost seems.
No, I think it's a very slow moving. I think the speed of movement is one thing that maybe comes across very differently when those types of things happen.
Sure.
With the aging infrastructure we've got and the aging grid that we have, for instance, when you're talking about power outages, there's just so much demand now, and that's only increasing as we bury more fiber optic telecom lines. One of the big draws on energy today are all the data warehouses that are going up. I know here where I live in Nebraska, Facebook has an entire complex that's been under construction for 5 years, and it's got about 10 more to go. And so those types of drain that an Amazon plant puts on as these large pieces of construction are going in, or pieces of what we would call necessary consumer service today, they have a definite effect on the grid, on the power supply, and really only increases that demand, which causes then not only on the electrical side, but on the electrical generation side. So natural gas is used predominantly in power generation, and so it increases the demand even for natural gas. So it has a ripple effect all the way through the system. From the consumer point, it's hard for us to see that.
Right.
You think, well, why don't you just go bury more line? Why don't you just the biggest problem is that the ability to generate and store that power is the biggest challenge right now that the grid is facing. And I think also I think you also have the cost of that. I mean, it's expensive. People are strained right now in their pocketbook, and there's a real sensitivity to how do you balance the socioeconomics of it while you're trying to improve all this.
Now, I've heard you mention a couple times, so it's kind of become an alarm on me about our infrastructure, and it sounds like we're pretty behind. So if we didn't do any type of construction or expansion that needs any additional infrastructure for energy, how far behind are we?
We're probably about 25 years behind, I would say, especially in urban areas, just because of the age of the infrastructure. And one of the real challenges that the companies that are going out and servicing and trying to put new infrastructure in, there aren't really good. They're getting better, but there aren't really good historical maps of where things were buried 50 years ago.
Sure.
So if a natural gas pipeline or a natural gas line in a city, you could be plus or minus 6 feet when you're digging. And so you don't want to hit that line, obviously. So there's all these challenges about locating, having reliable location, and then where do you put the new infrastructure, and how do you document that and make it accessible so that as time goes on, you know where this infrastructure is.
I got you. So it 25 years behind. That's and that does the technology on the energy side move as quickly as it does like with consumers with laptops and phones and whatnot? Does the technology move as quick? So is it easy to catch up to 25 years, or is it by the time you guys catch up, like technology's changed, so now you're another 25 years behind?
I'd love to say that the energy industry moves, rapidly and gets things done. I've often said that in some segments of the energy industry, it moves about as fast as a glacier. It just doesn't advance. And some of that is because of safety requirements.
Sure.
I think the biggest demand driver right now on the energy industry is regulators and the demand for safety, the demand for increased inspection and real quality inspection, knowing that you're not missing anything. Because obviously, as you're putting natural gas lines in the ground, you're putting electrical lines in the ground, you don't want to go through a sewer line, or you don't want to, we call that a crossbore in the industry. It happens and it can be dangerous. So you have to have, a capability of doing that. On the technology side, though, there are numerous things that are just about to hit the market. There's one that I've dealt with for years that I've helped a company with. They actually have a product that it's a natural gas product that can go on a house or a building. And, the one thing about natural gas is the company usually has to come out and shut it off, find the valve, shut it off. This actually shuts it off for yourself if there's an event. So if the flow exceeds something, it shuts it off. And not only that, it communicates back to the utility saying, hey, I just shut down at this address. Now, that has been in years of testing for many reasons. And as that starts to roll out through the country, that's going to be a large improvement in the system with technology like that. But
is that the same as those smart meters?
It's on the same type of network.
Okay.
So it's using sometimes it can be adaptable to both the AMI network or to a cell net. A lot of it works on a cell net at times. But if you can start integrating that with carbon monoxide detectors, when you can start integrating that with other safety items that are in a home today, you're really making homes and people even safer around this. And so, but it does take time because there are testing and you want to make sure it lasts in all weather and everything else.
I got you. So then where do you come in play then with the energy companies? Are you selling them products, helping them get merged?
For me, my part actually deals more in the services area. So that the companies that are going out and providing, let's say, damage prevention, leak detection, even pipeline condition assessments for water and repair. So I deal with those companies, getting them, because a lot of them, it's kind of nice. They're entrepreneurs, and
Right.
they've been 20 years in the business. Some of them need more capital to be able to grow to these increasing requirements. That's where investors and I work with investment companies to find that right investor for what they're looking to do, and then in turn, I'll make a lot of introductions for them with municipalities and utilities as well, to help them kind of grow as well and accelerate their growth.
So you work alongside a lot of local government mainly then.
Yeah, a lot of
Yes.
local government, and I do quite a bit with state governments as well, though.
No, nothing fed.
Not at this time. I have worked in the past. In the past, I was actually I was doing the smart meters. I was manufacturing the smart meters and some of the transmission lines. So we did a lot of work not only with the energy department, but also with the FCC, because you're communicating over the airwaves.
What when you deal with your local, what are you dealing with? Are you just permits or?
No, a lot of times it's getting the foot in the door with their public works or whoever the engineering firm is who's running a project for them.
Okay.
And really, it's about building a relationship where they trust you and they trust your references to come in and do that quality work we talked about it at a good
Sure.
price. Again, it's a very low error tolerating arena, and so what I help them do is just find that right company that's going to do it right from the first time.
Okay. And I'm sure dealing with the local or even state governments is probably lifting a burden off of the company in general, I would imagine, because
I try to assist them, but I also try to make sure that they also get those introductions too, because when it comes to the project, they're going to need to have that relationship. So
okay.
I try to make sure they've got the relationship internal to the company as well, and just kind of help them get off there, because a lot of times, and again, I love founder-led companies and entrepreneurs, but they've been pushing forward and they've got great relationships, but they can expand them, and that's what we really try to do.
And how much red tape is there from the government and just in general that you have to do that, like would be if let's say they got rid of some things that would not compromise safety or integrity, but speed things up at the same time?
On the energy side, there's quite a bit of things. I think permitting definitely is one of the things that the federal government could help with. I'd say permitting on active, good energy sources. That's one of the things they need. But really, when you start talking about servicing the infrastructure and going in, there are qualifications. I think there's a nice balance right now of qualifications required by both the government and by the utilities. That it's not overly cumbersome.
Okay.
They need training, and they need they need a good labor force to do that. And that's actually I think one of the largest challenges that these companies have today is labor. I think that
Mm.
finding people who want to have a career in the energy industry and the energy services industry, and again, thinking very counterintuitively, I talk to a lot of young people. I go and try to talk to classrooms, and some of them don't want to get around fossil fuels. They don't want to do, they believe clean air. And I tell them, you're actually doing something to make the world better by finding if there's a leak somewhere, or by going out and
Oh,
finding
that's a good point.
the condition of a water line. The water's a natural resource. It's a critical resource, and a leak in a water pipeline can be devastating. I mean, the amount of water that
Oh
can
yeah.
leak out. So I try to give them a little different perspective on the fact that it's here. It's something that's necessary to have what I call a good energy map. I don't believe there's one energy solution that's going to drive the future. It's going to be a kind of who's got what piece of the pie of all these energy
Sure.
sources. And I try to give them a little different perspective on it, that actually you can be working in that industry and you're doing exactly what your beliefs are and what your values are.
How challenging has that been with the clean energy initiatives that are going on? Because I feel like personally, and I'm no expert in this area, so you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong. I don't feel like our utility grid can handle like an EV mandate,
Mhm.
just in general. And so how hard has that been trying to combat and also educate people of energy in general, because all we hear is clean energy, clean energy, clean energy. But like you said, if you're spotting leaks, like you're hoping being clean still at the same time.
Well, I think, one of the things that I think has been a hindrance to clean energy, especially the EV movement, in my opinion, has been we got the cart before the horse.
Sure.
We put EV mandate, we put EV in these goals out without really understanding or having appreciation for the infrastructure that's necessary. If we had focused a lot of that in the beginning on putting the infrastructure in place to support what those goals were, it would not only have gone a little bit faster, I believe, but I believe also you wouldn't have the buyer's remorse we have with some of it. I read a report, and I think it was a Wall Street Journal. I'd have to look it up. But I read a report where almost half of EV owners currently are going to go back to combustion engine in their next vehicle, just because of the frustration they've had.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a perception that's going to have to be overcome. I think the RNG side, the renewable gas side, is very exciting because there is methane all around. I mean, there's cows are the biggest producers of methane in the world. Not oil wells. It's cows,
which is why they want to get rid of them.
And that's why everybody wants to get rid of them. But at the same time, there's a real chance here to capture that and to supplement our energy grid with I would say clean renewable natural gas and to do other things. So some real interesting use cases there privately that companies are doing. But I think as a whole, you're right. I think we got the cart before the horse in some ways.
Yeah, and if we're 25 years behind, I can't imagine what that would do to an EV company if we didn't obviously go EV first. I get part of the reasoning of them doing it. I putting a mandate, because some of these are only until 2030 and 2035. That's not 25 years from now. So
well, and you have another side of it while we're talking about EVs. You have another side of it that's really interesting to me that I wasn't really aware of until I made a trip to Washington last year and got to meet with some legislators on this. But with EVs, we have this road system in the United States. You see all the orange barrels up and everything else. There's a lot of road work. That's going to accelerate because of EVs. And the reason for that, and I was talking with some people about it, and it took me a little bit to understand it, because EVs, because the battery are so much heavier than a regular vehicle or sedan going down the road, they're having a 3 times effect on the roadways themselves. Wow. So now you're affecting that infrastructure as well.
Oh,
so now you've got funding that's going to happen there. So yeah, and you get into what the weight of some of the large semis and the larger trucks are. That's one of the big problems, is the weight that they've got going down the road. The other thing you've got the fact that right now EVs aren't taxed on, we go to the pump and pay for our gasoline. A good amount of that is taxes that go to the highway system.
Right.
EVs don't have that equivalent today. So now you have a shortage of funding. There's all kinds of things. Again, this is the cart before the horse.
Well, the government's just trying to figure out a way to tax it. That's all they're trying to do.
They'll figure it out. Usually figuring out how to tax isn't a problem. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's actually an interesting point, because I never thought about the weight of these cars. How much more does a regular EV car weigh compared to a regular car?
What I've been told is that it's almost 2 times because of the battery.
Wow. And then not to mention those batteries are expensive as heck to buy. Like I saw one guy, his Tesla went out and it was like 25 grand just to buy the battery.
I wouldn't doubt it. I'll believe you on that. Yeah. I mean, it's the living, it's almost like replacing your engine and your entire chassis system in a regular vehicle. It's the lifeblood of the car. Yeah.
So we hear, when we hear infrastructure, obviously the Biden administration did do the initiative for the Investment in America infrastructure bill, whatever it was called, I forget. Now I know I'm temporarily here in Michigan, and I see the signs of whenever they're putting on a new way, it says, "Hey, this is thanks to that bill," whatever. How much of that is going to infrastructure for our energy? Do you know?
For our energy, not as much as you would think. That was mainly a safety and an infrastructure bill to get the roadways and the crumbling infrastructure. If you remember back to the bridges that kind of fell apart, that's where most of that money was earmarked for. And it was an IIJA Act.
Okay.
And, a lot of that is still yet to be seen too. A lot of it's still kind of stuck in committee. I know as of a year ago, there was a real priority by the committees to make sure that money went to projects and not to go, let's say, redo the offices of the DOT or something like that. They wanted to make sure it really hit the street.
So we did it mainly for the roads and not for our energy.
No, not for the energy. Most of that energy infrastructure is being rebuilt by the private sector, by the utilities, by the by the telecom companies like AT&T and others that are putting in fiber optic. It's coming to them, but what's happening is the government gets involved from a regulatory standpoint. What they'll do is they'll go back and ask for a rate case. So when you hear a new rate case at your local power company, it's usually for some sort of capital improvement project they're putting in. Okay. So to do so many miles, they might need to add 5 cents to everybody's bill or something like that. So that's when you see rate cases being funded in that way.
So essentially, we the people, we at our consumer level are paying for it, and it's not being funded by the government. Like,
not as much. There's certain projects that are, certain large infrastructure projects, but as far as on a general time, it's normally it's usually us that's paying through our bills.
I got you. What's the quickest we can catch up?
Well, right now it's just a matter. It's really putting in and prioritizing the system. This is where I really think AI is going to help a lot of this.
Okay.
Because the more data that can be fed into AI algorithms that will help power and utility companies to prioritize where the weak points in the system are, they can really prioritize where to go check first or where to go, put new in-ground infrastructure in first. And so I think there's a merging here of technology that we haven't had for the past 20 years.
Sure.
And there's data out there that if we can get all that data into one kind of algorithm or one kind of AI machine, then it'll actually drive that answer. That's the quickest way to get caught up, I think, because it's not that the whole, I said 25 years, about 25 years worth of work, especially in urban areas, but it's like, new infrastructure is being put in today.
Sure.
Doesn't have to be touched. But I'm talking about really identifying where is that aged infrastructure, getting that replaced out with new, fresh methods of transmission, and really getting good, accurate mapping in the ground. And once that's what we need to do, that to me is really the priority, because those are where the inefficiencies in the system are, and a lot of those lead to like we were talking, brownouts and other things that happen.
Right. So it's mainly like the lines and stuff is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
That are just kind of outdated and need replaced.
Yeah. And some just need, and some new technology put in too, as far as monitoring and metering and things like that. I think there's some real technology out there that'll help in the future. We just have to get to it now.
Absolutely. And hopefully we can get to it soon. Do you see where we are strictly only clean energy, or do you see us always using coal still and nuclear energy as well? Or,
in my opinion, I'm certainly being in the fossil fuel industry, I believe fossil fuels has a place. I don't think it's the only thing. I think that there is a kind of like a pie out there of energy in the future and what it looks like. And I think that, electrification is going to be one slice of that. Natural gas and oil are going to be a slice of it. And wind is going to be, it's very situational. And I think you've got to have the right solution for where you are. It's not I don't believe that energy is a cookie cutter, one-stop shop for everybody.
Okay.
I also think on a couple of other fronts, I think that you have to think socioeconomically about it. You can't have energy be so expensive that people in the middle class and people who are, let's say, not, looking for work or something like they're, going through a rough, they've got to be able to afford energy. They got to be able to afford heat. So I think that's where I think about making sure that as a society, we have alternatives to the, I'd say, expensive energy. And we still have these alternatives so people can still fuel their homes, heat their, cook their dinner and things like that, and not have to worry about trading groceries for that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, John, this has been very insightful. honestly. I want to highlight your company here, veteranhorizons.com. And if you want, just do a shameless plug real quick for your company and on what anybody can reach you on horizons.com or and just give a little shout out to your company.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, so again, I enjoy what I do. As I get to work with founder-led companies and companies that are both looking for investment or just looking for some leadership help on where to go next and strategic help. I like to do a lot of strategic planning with them as well in their markets. And then on the investor side, if there's investment looking for infrastructure or energy service-related companies or companies in that sector, definitely love partnering with them. I'm in New York and Los Angeles about every month for meetings. But no, and really enjoy those two sides. And I've got a broad background. If people go to my website or they click on my LinkedIn, they'll see that I've got a pretty broad background, and I also enjoy all those fields. I've been fortunate enough in my career to really touch many sectors and many levels of companies. So no, I'd love to work with anyone who's watching today.
Absolutely. But you guys give Jon a shout if you have any type of energy question. He's been in the field for a long time. Dependable guy. veteran-horizons.com. And then here's his LinkedIn. We're going to put that, hyperlink it down below in the description so it'll be easy. That way you don't have to worry about typing out the words and everything. And then you'll be getting a copy of all this as well. So, Jon, thanks again for joining us.
Yep.
Sorry my partner didn't come, but we might have to reach out to you again because he's likes energy and whatnot. So he's bummed he missed it, but we'll have to have you back on again.
Sounds great. Love to do it again, Jeff. Thanks very much.
All right, Jon. Yes, sir. You have a wonderful day, and thank you everybody for watching.
Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.